Alright, our last episode of Season 2 for TNG is called Shades of Grey. It's episode number 48. It originally aired on July 15th, 1989. It was written by Maurice Hurley, Hans Beimler, and Richard Manning, and directed by Rob Bowman. Okay, and plot-wise with this episode, while Commander Riker performs a preliminary geological survey on an unexplored planet, a plant jabs him in the leg. Now, the plant has been infected with microbes, we figure out, and if not checked, the microbes will eventually reach Riker's brain and kill him. Now, when the microbes reach her patient's spinal cord, Dr. Pulaski brings in a machine to stimulate Riker's brain directly and keep him alive. Now, the machine inserts long rods into Riker's head, as you can see in this picture, and as Pulaski diddles with the machine, Riker begins to re-experience his adventures aboard the Enterprise. Now, these memories apparently affect the microbe's metabolism, as Pulaski realizes that bad memories and stressful emotions basically retard the microbe's growth. She deduces that the microbes must be sensitive to endorphins, chemicals produced by the brain. So she refocuses the machine to give Riker more bad memories, as Deanna Troi is sensing all of these while this is going on. After a series of flashbacks from previous episodes, the microbes get fed up and they die. And that is the end of this episode. Pretty simple plot-wise. Now, this episode is considered by many TNG fans and even some people who worked on the show to be the worst Star Trek The Next Generation episode ever made. Some people even consider it to be the worst Star Trek episode ever made. There's a debate on that one. And the question of whether this is true or not really depends on the viewer. I can see people's point definitely about it. The question that I have for you is, does the fact that this is basically a show with clips from old episodes, does that make a difference to you? Now, the reason why this episode was even created was because, I think I've said this in previous reviews, was that TNG went over budget on Elementary Dear Data and Q Who, which were some great episodes from Season 2. So they had to save money, and one of the things that Maurice Hurley thought of was to do a clip show just to save money. And they actually cut down the number of days. Normally it would take 7 days to film an episode. They thought, oh, we'll just do 5, but actually Paramount really put the pressure on them, and they ended up filming this episode in 3 days. They had 2 in sickbay and 1 on the planet and other scenes. So this was a very quickly made episode, and it definitely shows. You don't really see a lot of other scenes beyond this, and really what they did for the sickbay scenes was just to change angles and perspectives, just to give us a little difference in what we see, but that's basically about it. So the question I have for you is, does the fact that this was intended to be a clip show make a difference to you whether this is the worst episode of TNG or not? Now, they intended it to be a clip show, and that's exactly what you got, a clip show. So in one way of thinking, you could kind of forgive this episode because it wasn't that they were planning on creating this brilliantly written script and they just botched everything. It was just that its original conception was a cheap one, and they did the best that they could with it. That's one perspective. Another perspective is, well, that doesn't make any difference. It looks like it was a cheaply made show, and it is. And somebody could also say that even though it was a clip show, it wasn't a very good one. One thing that I recently read about this episode is the clips that they show, these are supposed to be Commander Riker's memories here. And a lot of the scenes and the clips that we see, they couldn't possibly be Commander Riker's memories. For example, we see a episode called Skin of Evil in one of the clips, and Riker gets sucked into a black pit, which is the evil Armus. And then after he gets sucked in, we see Data and Picard talking. Now, how could this possibly be Riker's memory if he's lying in the black pit? If anything, we should see him and his perspective inside of there. Of course, that would cost a lot of money, so they wouldn't do that. And you see this example in other clips that they show too, where this is not necessarily Riker's perspective. We see people on the bridge, like Picard on the bridge, and an ensign walking across the bridge. How could that be Riker's memory if he's not even there? So, in that sense, they didn't really do a good job of this being a clip show, because it didn't make sense that this would be Riker's memories. There's also been criticism that Commander Riker, or Jonathan Frakes, I should say, is the only one who really plays his character well in this episode. All the other actors are either overacting or not doing enough. And the reason why they overact is just to do something to create some kind of drama in this episode, and it just didn't come off too well. Now, this is also the last time we see Dr. Pulaski on the Enterprise, and she really isn't mentioned after this point much at all. There are a couple references which I'll get to when we get to those episodes, but really this is the last time we see Dr. Pulaski, and then she's off the show. So in some people's minds, they didn't like Dr. Pulaski, so they give this credit that this is the last time we have to bear with her. But I really think that people gave the character of Pulaski a lot worse of a rap than they really deserved. I think Diana Muldaur did the best that she could. She was supposed to be a female version of Dr. McCoy, really. And whether she gelled with the cast or not, I think she did the best she could, and she wasn't that bad of a doctor, really. I would have found it interesting to see her and Dr. Crusher interact somehow if they had come up with that, but that never occurred. So, yeah, that's Shades of Grey, and that's the end of Season 2, guys. So I'm going to ask you basically the same question that I asked at the beginning of this season. What are your thoughts on Season 2? Now, the first question I have within this question is, what was your favorite episode and your least favorite? Now, if it's Shades of Grey, you can comment below and let me know right away. If it's not, let me know what is your least favorite episode. It could be that you kind of write off this episode as just a clip show, and so it doesn't count. What would be an episode that you thought just didn't turn out really well? I don't think there is a terrible episode besides this one. I would probably say that Where Silence Has Lease probably is the weakest of them. That's the one where I mentioned it's kind of funny. Some of the dialogue Worf has to say, there's only one bridge! And that's unintentionally laughable, I think. And there are a couple episodes that are kind of more forgettable. Not necessarily bad, but forgettable. There was an episode called Contagion, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but it really doesn't have enough in it for you to remember too well. So that could be considered one of the worst episodes, too. The best episodes, my favorite is Q Who, but I'm biased because I like Q and I like the Borg a lot. So that's one of my favorites, but there are a lot of good ones. Elementary Dear Data, I think, is near the top. Samaritan Snare, I think, is good. Manhunt, I really like. I always like seeing Lwaxana Troi. Lots of good favorites, but I'm curious about what you guys think. And in general, what are my thoughts about Season 2? Well, this was a season that was cut down by the writer's strike from the end of the first season, so it kind of suffered because there weren't enough episodes as the other ones. This was definitely an improvement on Season 1, I do have to say. I think the writers and the cast are starting to have a better idea of who the characters are and what's going on, how to write a better episode. And I think that's even in Season 3, that's really culminates as the best work. But Season 2 is definitely improvement on Season 1. But having said that, I still think Season 1 and 2 are probably the weakest of all the seasons in Star Trek The Next Generation. That's just my personal opinion. That's not to say there aren't any good spots, but I would say in general they're the two weakest. And in spite of that, I still love the show. I love it a lot, and I would still watch plenty of these. So that's my opinion, guys. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have that below here, Bob the Business Builder. And if you are interested in any of my other work that I have besides the TNG stuff, I have a lot of stuff about marketing and a lot of stuff that I am going to be making about social media. Feel free to check those out too. I thank you for watching, and the last thing that I have for you guys is comment below on what you would like to see in my future reviews. Maybe something that I haven't touched on yet, or something that you would like me to talk about more and expand upon. And if there's something you don't like about the reviews, feel free to comment below on that, and maybe we'll adjust that in the future. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you later.